really hope you watched the recent video about USDT, because that's where we told you why the hell one piece of some digital funny money is worth $1, what the backing is, and why Tether is a dark horse. In the current video, we'll look at the more decent guys, as well as those who attract gamblers and easy money seekers. USD coin, or simply USDC, is issued by Circle Internet Financial Limited. By the way, it was through their apps that I bought my first Bitcoin at $300 and Ethereum at $6. If someone had told me how much they would be worth today. But my life is of little interest to you. What is more important is that this Circle is not registered in somewhere like the Cayman Islands, but in the US. In fact, this is going to be the main leitmotif of the USDC chapter, what sets it apart from Tether. USDC about the same in design, but with a little more decency and cleanliness. I mean, if Tether is a bad boy who quarrels with teachers and hangs around with bullies, but still fulfills his main function, the USDC, on the other hand, does its homework, it is tidy as hell, and generally performs the same functions as its bully clone. But what's the difference, you might ask? Well, look. Circle Limited is a company registered in the US. It is managed by a consortium together with Coinbase. Coinbase is a super transparent company, registered in the same US, and more importantly, it trades on the Nasdaq. For those who don't know, to start trading on the US exchanges, you have to pass a hell of a lot of integrity checks. It's not the same as if you were going to release a shitcoin or something. And the USDC emitting company itself is also planning to go public on the New York Stock Exchange. Attention now, they have submitted to the Securities and Exchange Commission a package of documents for listing on the stock exchange, which includes audited report. And that's a big 300-page document that the SEC accepted. Then, regarding the report, on the one hand, the structures of their reserves is not explained in detail. The reports state that the issued funny money is actually backed by Circle's dollar-denominated assets. But even in the absence of a detailed structure, there is this statement. Accounts are held at US-regulated financial institutions, limited to cash and short-dated US government obligations. Do you remember that red, yellow and green traffic light on riskiness? In our case, you could say that there is only yellow here, accounts with unknown banks, and green, short-dated treasuries. But since there are indications that the institutions are not Panamanian but US-based, which are controlled by the SEC, in this particular case, yellow can also be colored green. The fact that the report is issued by Grant Thornton, a public accounting company registered not in the Cayman Islands but in the US, increases confidence. It is also stated, "Don't shit yourself, brother, we exchange it one-to-one like no problem." Here you can remember what it says on the Tether website.
Tether reserves the right to delay the redemption or withdrawal of Tether tokens if such delay is necessitated by the illiquidity or unavailability or loss of any reserves held by Tether to back the Tether tokens, and Tether reserves the right to redeem Tether tokens by in-kind redemptions of securities and other assets held in the reserves.
Well, if we can't exchange it, we might not exchange it. Who knows how it's going to be? In general, the USDC is backed by assets that are held by prominent American institutions, such as the Bank of New York or BlackRock. Man, I feel like the only thing you're going to remember about the USDC is this. In the US, in the US, in the same US, US, in the US. But overall, that's how it is. They've not been caught up in any scandal. The conversion of this funny money to the real dollar, as reported by my sources, is present. The exchange rate is holding steady, with minor deviations. They're keen to start trading on the stock exchange. They also have US and UK licenses of all sorts. So it turns out that the USDC is the kind of Mr. Sleek from the world of stablecoins. Fans of putting their hand in the lion's mouth, aka crypto traders, have long known what Binance is. For ordinary people, the same platform has become synonymous with peer-to-peer crypto shopping. If you didn't understand most of the words just now, it's time for you to go to a home for the elderly. It's time I explain it to you. Binance is the world's largest cryptocurrency exchange. After the 24th of February, as Putin's war commenced, a bunch of Russian relocatees have grown fond of Binance for the convenience of buying crypto dollars in rubles with a bank card. It's called peer-to-peer, that is, from fella to fella. Traitors to the motherland, aka relocatees, have also loved Binance for getting their salaries paid into their crypto wallets and exchanging it to their local fiat currency. It also includes those who, for some reason, still want to own a dollar. On top of that, Binance has its own stablecoin, BUSD, and there is no sensation here, just like with USDC. Everything is more or less the same. It is emitted not by Binance itself, but by the Paxos Trust Company, which is registered in the US. Still no audits, just a report stating that here is this much of Binance crypto and that much of it is either in dollars or US highly secure instruments. So the story is quite similar. No scandals, US registration adds a plus point, declaring the backing in either cash or treasuries, which is all similar to USDC. Generally speaking, if we talk about those three types of funny money, Tether, BUSD and USDC, in terms of reliability I would rank them as follows. First place, USDC. Second place, BUSD. And fourth place, Tether. There is no third place to emphasize that the first two are close to each other and far distant from Tether. Once again, I'm not saying Tether will collapse tomorrow, it's just that compared to the other two, Tether is a pretty shady bloke who smokes like a chimney and swears like a sailor. That said, all three are very confident of holding a peg to $1. From there, the choice is yours. Which stablecoin to use, how to use it, and in what situation. There is no universal answer. But all three of those are the same in one fundamental thing. They are all centralized and can be easily frozen. But we'll talk about that later, because there really is an amazing beast we need to talk about now. It's a stablecoin backed by crypto. Well guys, get ready. If you're feeling a slight tingle of discontent that some derivative created by computer rats could be worth $1, then brace yourself. If those three brothers have $1 real behind every single one piece of crypto, in case of this one, every single piece of crypto is backed by crypto. You got it right. If previous stablecoins are a derivative from the dollar, then this is a derivative from a derivative. But don't be too quick to explode just yet. The creators of this system have hedged and pledged that securing crypto with another crypto is not entirely secure, so they have pledged that one crypto dollar, which is called DAI, is lent for a reserve of, well, $1.5 in Ethereum, for example. That's just for now, to understand. So, you come... Well, no, here you don't come anywhere at all. You give $150 secured in Ethereum through a smart contract, and you get $100 worth of DAI in return. It's essentially borrowing 100 DAI secured by $150 in something else. Here we took the Ethereum as an example. If you change your mind after 1 minute, the transaction can be reversed. What is the mechanism here to prevent it from collapsing? If the same Ethereum exchange rate starts to plummet, and thus the collateral becomes below the 1.5 ratio, well, for example, your Ethereum collateral becomes worth $140, the smart contract sells your Ethereum collateral at the current price. But since this is a forced closure, there is a penalty. So you are left with $140 in Ethereum, of which $100 is sort of collateral for those 100 DAI, and previously $50 that are now $40 are excess collateral. The penalty is 13%, so $100 is considered as collateral against the originally received 100 DAI. 13% of that is the penalty, so $113 are withheld. You're forced to sell your position at $140, so we can only get back $27 in Ethereum. This is instead of a $50 excess of collateral. Schematically, this can be visualized as follows. The size of the bubble is the amount of DAI borrowed. Bigger the bubble, bigger the bundle. The X and Y axis values are indicated on the screen. What are we seeing here? The collateral of each loan goes up and down depending on the value of Ethereum. If someone takes the risk of securing on right up close, meaning 1 to 1.5, he will be automatically eliminated. These are the bubbles that fall down when they cross the line at 150%. If you are still with us, let's add a little bit of reality. DAI's collateral contains not only Ethereum but all sorts of things, mostly the Mr. Sleek USDC. For example, the distribution of DAI emitted by different types of collateral was like this. You can see here Ethereum, Bitcoin, and all sorts of other things. Overall, all the loans were 78% oversecured, or 178% secured. When I was writing the script, the collateral looked like this, and then the attentive viewer will say, "Wait, you said the minimum collateral was 150% and now it's 138. What does that mean? Another dirty scam?" This is where we go into the details, which, as usual, are more complicated. When you choose what to provide your DAI with, the percentage depends on the choice. Well, if it is USDC, it is almost 1-to-1 for the reason you already know. But if it is Bitcoin or Ethereum, it requires more, closer to 1.5. You can see between these pictures that in the second one, the share of Ethereum and Bitcoin has decreased, while the share of USDC and other stablecoins has increased. So the overall backing percentage has decreased because stablecoins require a much lower level of over-collateralization.
What the fuck?
Yes, dear viewer, I realize your head might crack open from all of it, but there's still a lot I'm overlooking here. I didn't tell you anything about keepers, about MakerDAO, but all in all, I think the average viewer doesn't need to know that. So let's summarize. DAI is a stablecoin for ideological crypto adepts because it's decentralized. It best embodies the very idea of crypto in itself. But I personally feel uncomfortable with it compared to all the others mentioned because it's a derivative of a derivative, and we've seen something like that somewhere before, like in 2008.
But the housing market is rock solid.
And then again, but there is an automatic mechanism to ensure against a sharp fall in price. And if you look at the historical data, it has held the 1-to-1 rate quite successfully. So for laymen, all they need to know is that there is such a stablecoin out there, how it is backed, and a couple of other details. You can dig deeper about the rest on your own. And we've pretty much finished the chapter on the cryptocurrency-backed stablecoin DAI. But there's one more detail there. Let's do it this way. If you still want to know how this tricky stablecoin manages to keep its rates stable and still survive the bloody crypto crash, then keep listening further. If you want to learn about the third type, the algorithmic stablecoin that ended up actually being a scam a bit sooner, then click on this timestamp. Now, back to DAI. Oddly enough, despite the fact that DAI manages to hold a peg to the dollar quite well, it does not have the same highly effective direct arbitrage mechanism as USDT, USDC, or BUSD. But DAI has a very interesting mechanism of interest rate management. You remember that each DAI is essentially a loaned crypto dollar, right? Well, you have to pay interest on loans. So if DAI suddenly starts to cost 90 cents instead of $1, then MakerDAO just raises the rate to make it profitable to pay off the loan as quickly as possible, which creates demand for DAI from a borrower, and so the price goes up. And if DAI starts to cost, for example, 110 cents, the interest rate is reduced so that it was profitable to take more loans. Convenient, that is. You can take a loan for 110 cents and you can pay for it later when DAI will again cost $1. This way, more DAI appears on the market and its price goes back down. Up to this point, we have had success stories. We've talked about popular and working projects that could. But now we're going to talk about the real Ponzi scheme, which has damaged stablecoins' reputation in the eyes of ordinary people. Well, because crypto scam is called UST. And I have personally met people who have read the news about cryptocurrency UST has fallen in price 99 times and went like, well, cryptocurrency anarchist, your crypto is There is another reason why we are making this video, so that no one gets confused and remembers a stablecoin, whoever calls himself not, it is everyone. USDT, USDC, BUSD are backed by financial assets. DAI is oversecured by USDC, other crypto and cunning price-holding mechanisms. And UST is not backed by anything. What's the trick here? They issue two coins. The first is the UST, which has to be equal to $1. The second is Luna, which is worth as much as it can. Between the two, there is a bridge transfer from one to the other called Terra. Who even cares what it's called? What's interesting here is this. Terra always assumes that 1 UST equals $1. This is where our story begins. A quick example. Let's say Luna is trading at $100 and the UST drops to 95 cents. Then a bunch of shrewd speculators buy 100 UST for $95, exchange it for Luna, sell Luna, and voila! They made $100 out of $95 just sitting on their asses. They also pushed the UST rate back to $1, increasing demand for it. This begs the question then, where does the value of Luna itself come from? Developers were able to build a whole system of different hopeful crypto services around the Luna, so people invested in it in the hope that when those crypto services took over the world, they would become fabulously rich. Also, UST could be deposited at 19.5% per annum, when during normal peacetime, dollar deposits yielded around 1%. Well, as they say, what can go wrong? In case you're unaware of this epic story, the so-called UST stablecoin is now worth 3 cents, and the chart looks like this. Failures are very easy to make fun of. They already happened when... And yet, just 4 to 5 months ago, there were a bunch of people who believed in the holy UST. These are the comments you see on the screen. And they exactly believe, because there is no argument from the comments, but only a divine inspiration. But we're not the ones to blindly trust such an inspiration. The UST and Luna cascading collapse scenario is not something highly improbable, but a very realistic case. The thing is, the whole boom in UST's capitalization to almost $20 billion was built on the promise of a 19.5% yield on deposits in it. And that yield didn't really come from anywhere in particular. For the most part, it was just Luna owners burning through their money to subsidize such a gigantic rate. Sooner or later, this free distribution of money had to come to an end, at which point the whole pyramid should have started to collapse, which is essentially what happened in the end. We will now move on to the conclusions of which stablecoin to choose. Here we have looked at the most popular stablecoins, which serve as a great substitute for the dollar. Well, not all of them, of course. They can be divided into 3 categories. Centralized fiat, USDT, USDC, BUSD, they are issued by a specific legal entity. It also means that the same legal entity can block them, for example by complying with sanctions requirements. You can now see on the screen the number of addresses blocked by Tether, the addresses with money on them. For example, Tether itself claims to have blocked 3 accounts with a balance of $160 million in USDT at the request of law enforcement. Or take a more recent case with Tornado Cash, a crypto tumbler that mixes cryptocurrency funds with others so as to obscure the trail back to the fund's original source. It has fallen under the US sanctions, and then Circle Limited, a USDC issuer, has blacklisted the wallet addresses of Tornado Cash with assets worth $75,000 in USDC. So much for decentralization and security. Everything is blocked very simply, quickly, and securely. By the way, this is the kind of cryptocurrency central banks around the world want to introduce. If this information was new to you, I give you my head that you imagined all cryptocurrency to be a dark and unregulated scam where people are ripped off and organs are sold. And here it is, centralization and bans. If this situation does not suit you as a true anarchist, then go for decentralized cryptocurrency-backed stablecoins like DAI. And algorithmic stablecoins without the backing like UST and Luna. Well, maybe someday they'll come up with something more stable, but it's quite unlikely without at least the backing with a USDC-type stablecoin. The conclusion sums up nicely in the stablecoin trilemma. This is where you have 3 parameters: decentralization, exchange rate stability, capital efficiency, and you can only choose 2. Here we have centralized, here we have decentralized, and here we have algorithmic ones. Then I would add my subjective opinion, which of course is not an investment recommendation. If you are a newbie and just need to stock up on dollars or transfer a certain amount somewhere, look towards centralized coins with real collateral, for a shorter term USDT, and for a longer term USDC or BUSD. I consider the risk of blocking your assets to be extremely low. The only way you can be blocked is if 1. You're on the sanctions lists, and I wonder how many of you are tied to the Russian top brass, I doubt if any. Plus, if you do not keep your money in your own wallet, but in an exchange where you're identified by passport or ID. In this case, we have a video on this topic, how to create your wallet, by which identification is very difficult. Everything else is either for speculators or for hardcore financiers, or for crypto-anarchists. What more can I say? With stablecoins, as with anything else, there is no perfect solution to every problem. Define your objective and goal, choose the right option for it, and go for it. Well, or don't do anything, but share this video with your friends to dissuade them from playing with the devil's toy. Now, we extend our huge thank you to our supporters on Patreon. Cheers for staying with us and helping us do what we do. Hit the like button, share this video, and throw a word or 2 in the comments. And I'm the researcher.